Hello everyone, a very good evening. Welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Welcome to Target Prelims 2023. Today we shall be taking up the third session under International Relations. Over the last 2 days, we have covered more than 50 important topics from the current affairs of last 1 year that are relevant for international relations for the upcoming prelims examination. So today we shall be hoping to cover 30 more topics. So don't go anywhere, stay with us for the next 2 hours and we shall cover all these topics comprehensively. In return, all we expect is you to support us. So press the like button, share these videos with other aspirants and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And also note, the Target Prelims 2023 shall continue till the 15th of May. We have few more important sessions lined up. Please take a look at the schedule and attend these sessions live at 7:30 p.m. on our YouTube channel. So let's get started with the first question for today. Consider the following statements. Recently, India hosted the Voice of the Global South Summit. India had invited all the countries from the Southern Hemisphere to participate in the summit. India organized the summit in the backdrop of its G20 presidency. So 3 statements have been given in relation to the Voice of the Global South Summit, which was in news at the start of this year. So let's understand what is this topic. Let's understand the concept of Global South and Global North. Let's understand this initiative that was taken up by India, and then let's arrive at the answer. In the meanwhile, you can take a guess. The poll is live. You can also try and answer the question. See, in international relations, the term Global North and Global South, they don't refer to geographical directions. Instead, the term Global North refers to the developed countries of the world, whereas the term Global South refers to the developing and underdeveloped economies of the world. These terminologies, they trace their origin to the 1980s. During the Cold War period, a popular economist known as Willy Brandt, he was studying the economic divide between the developed and underdeveloped countries. And he figured that the world is largely divided between these rich and poor countries. So the Brandt line was drawn that depicts this income divide, developmental divide between the rich countries and the poor countries. In this image here, you can see the Brandt line. All the countries present above the line represent the global north. This includes North American economies such as US and Canada, the European countries, the Soviet Union back in those days, Australia, New Zealand, etc. All the other countries which are below the line, they represent the global south. It essentially includes all the former colonies, the poor countries in South America, Africa, all across Asia, including India. So these developing, underdeveloped countries, they are referred to as the global south. So it does not refer to geographical directions essentially. Now when we say a global south summit, it does not mean it includes only countries from Southern Hemisphere. That would be an incorrect statement. It essentially includes countries which are developing and underdeveloped. That is the meaning behind it. So recently, India hosted a very important summit in January 2023. A virtual summit was organized by India, and we brought together most of the developing and underdeveloped countries together. Most of the countries of the global south were brought together so that they could express their voice, they could raise their voice on key global issues. Because all the major issues that are affecting the world, be it climate change, be it the economic crisis, the wars and conflicts, they are largely creations of developed nations. Developed countries would have contributed more to these crisis situations. Whereas the global south countries, the poor countries, underdeveloped countries, developing nations, they are at the receiving end. They have to bear the bigger impact of these crises and issues that are largely created by the developed north. So that is why India has often been acting as the voice of the global south countries. In Indian diplomacy, we give a lot of priority for South-South cooperation. This term refers to cooperation between developing and underdeveloped nations. Now let's say India is cooperating with African countries, or we are assisting our South Asian neighbors, or we are investing in South American countries or in the Pacific Islands. Any such collaboration between developing and underdeveloped countries is referred to as South-South cooperation. So since many decades, India has been a leader of the global South. India and as well as China, Brazil, all these countries are leaders of the global South, and they help them raise their voice at global platforms. At platforms like WTO, Climate Change Convention, the United Nations, especially at the UN Security Council, and also at the UN General Assembly. The small countries may not be able to find a voice. Let's say countries like Bhutan or Maldives or small poor African countries. They may not be able to express themselves and gain enough influence on a particular issue. So large and powerful developing nations like India, they step up and act as the voice of the global South. We use our influence at these platforms to bring all these like-minded countries together, to bring up these issues and to push the developed countries to take action on these pressing issues that are facing the world. So this is referred to as South-South cooperation. So this year, India is giving even more priority to this domain as we are hosting the G20 presidency this year. In the backdrop of India being the host of G20 presidency, we wanted to bring up the issues affecting the global South countries. So keeping this interest in mind, India organized the Global South Summit, the Voice of the Global South Summit, and we brought together most of the South countries, except for few countries like China and Pakistan, with whom we don't have good relations as of now. Other than that, most of the other developing, underdeveloped countries were invited by India for this virtual summit. During the summit, India has highlighted the key issues affecting these countries, such as the principle of CBDR, common but differentiated responsibilities. This is a core underlying principle of the climate change negotiations. Because if you look at greenhouse gas emissions, it's largely the industrialized countries, developed countries of the global north, which are responsible for emissions, global warming, and climate change. They bear historical responsibility. So India has championed this principle, the CBDR principle, which means that the goal of fighting climate change is a common goal for everyone. But the responsibility has to be differentiated based on their historical emissions. Now, why should poor countries, developing countries, which haven't contributed much to emissions, why should they take the same responsibility for tackling climate change? Because tackling climate change is very expensive. It will have a huge socio-economic cost if you have to transition to cleaner energy. We are not saying that we will not fight climate change. We are saying that the responsibility that we should be taking should be lower than that compared to the global north. Those responsible for the pollution, those who emitted the emissions, they should take up ownership and display greater responsibility. That is the essence of this concept. So India has always championed the CBDR principle at the Climate Change Convention. We also seek to promote respect for international law, sovereignty, then respect for international institutions, the reform of outdated institutions such as the UN, World Bank, IMF, because all the multilateral institutions are dominated by the global north countries again. So all such issues affecting the developing, underdeveloped nations are brought up by India, and India acts as the voice of the global south. So that is why this summit was organized by India. So now based on this, we can easily answer the question. The first statement is absolutely correct. The second statement is wrong. The second statement is incorrect because we didn't invite all the southern hemisphere countries. As I told you, the term global south is not a geographical reference. It's a reference to developing and underdeveloped nations. So second statement is absolutely wrong. Third statement is correct because we did organize the summit in the backdrop of the G20 presidency so that we can bring up these issues that are affecting the global south countries. Now the question is asking you to identify the incorrect statement. Always read the question carefully. So statement 2 is the only incorrect statement here. So option B becomes the correct answer. 2 only. Around 54% have got the right answer. Very good. Majority of you have got the right answer. So the topic is very important for your prelims, so please make a note. Now moving on to the next question. In the context of India-Egypt relations, consider the following. India and Egypt have agreed to elevate their bilateral ties to the strategic partnership level. India has invited Egypt as a guest country for the upcoming G20 summit. India and Egypt were founders of NAM, the Non-Aligned Movement. So we need to check which of the statements are correct. See, I've picked this question because during this year's Republic Day parade on the 26th of January, India had invited Egyptian President as the chief guest. Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, the Egyptian president whom you can see in the image over here, was invited by India as the chief guest for the Republic Day celebrations. This is an annual practice in India. Every year for the Republic Day parade, we invite a chief guest, and this is a symbolic gesture that we send out. It's a symbolic message. It means that India will prioritize its ties with this particular country for the coming 1 year. Previously, we have invited the leaders of Brazil, United States, all the ASEAN leaders, leaders of all Central Asian countries, the president of Russia. So all the top leaders have been invited previously. It's a symbolic message we send out that for the next 1 year, we will prioritize India's ties with that particular country. So this year, the focus country is Egypt in Indian foreign policy. That's why the Egyptian president was invited. So this makes India-Egypt relations very important for our exams. So let's understand some important facts. Based on that, we can easily answer this question. Now, if you look at Egypt, it is a very important African country. It's located in North Africa and it connects with West Asia. So Egypt gains a lot of strategic significance because of its location. Here to the north, it borders the Mediterranean Sea, which is a vital sea lane of communication. And over here, the Sinai Peninsula, the Sinai Desert, is what connects Egypt with West Asia. It essentially links the African continent with the Asian continent. This region is always volatile, very sensitive, strategically important. You can see the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aqaba over here, where Jordan, Israel, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, 4 countries are locked in this tight spot. It's a quadrijunction of these 4 countries. Then Red Sea further extends to the Gulf of Suez, where you come across the strategic Suez Canal. It is a lifeline for the global economy. It provides a shorter route between Europe and the Indian Ocean. India as well is heavily dependent on the Suez Canal. So this shipping channel is extremely crucial for the global economy, and even ports like Port Said over here at the opening of Suez Canal is strategically very important. A lot of India's export and imports, especially that are headed towards Europe, passes through the Suez Canal. So Egypt, which controls the Suez Canal, plays a key role in the global economy. Plus, India and Egypt have historical relations. Not just since ancient medieval times, but in modern times, we have built actually very close relations between the two countries. Egypt is also blessed with the Nile River, which you can see here, along with other important locations. But the most important point is that post-independence, post-decolonization, India, Egypt, they both championed a similar ideology. When the world was divided during the Cold War period between the American power bloc and the Soviet power bloc, the leaders of India and Egypt, Prime Minister Nehru and Gamal Abdel Nasser, the Egyptian leader, together they championed a unique ideology called the NAM movement, or the Non-Aligned Movement. We chose a third neutral path and established a new ideology for the world when the world was divided between the two superpowers. So India and Egypt came together with other like-minded countries such as Indonesia, the African country of Ghana, and the erstwhile country of Yugoslavia. These 5 countries came together to establish the Non-Aligned Movement. The Non-Aligned Movement played a key role during the Cold War period in providing a third neutral ideology for several poor and developing countries, and India gave leadership to the Non-Aligned Movement. Got it? So third statement is absolutely correct. India has invited Egypt as a guest country for the G20 summit. This is also a correct statement. If you guys remember, the day before yesterday, we spoke about the G20 summit, which India is hosting. I gave you the list of guest countries that India has invited. So Egypt is definitely one amongst them. We have invited United Arab Emirates as well and few other countries. So Egypt is definitely in the list. So second statement is also correct. Then during the visit of the Egyptian president for the Republic Day celebrations, India-Egypt elevated their relations to the strategic partnership level. So statement 1 is also correct. Today we have a well-diversified relationship. Egypt is crucial for India because it's a member of the African Union. It's a member of the Arab League. It plays a key role in West Asian geopolitics and as well as in African geopolitics. So India's ties with Egypt is extremely important because of this reason. And also, Egypt procured large quantities of wheat from India last year when the Russia-Ukraine war broke out. Because see, Egypt is one of the world's biggest importers of wheat. The war in Russia and Ukraine disrupted the wheat supplies, and Egypt relied upon India to supply the wheat that was required. And Egypt is also looking at defense procurement from India. It is interested in procuring the LCA Tejas, the light combat aircraft, as well as the Akash surface-to-air missiles. So we are looking at a close defense collaboration as well, along with strong economic ties. So that is why the relationship has been elevated to the strategic partnership level. So all three given statements are correct. Option D becomes the right answer. You can even expect a map-based question on Egypt. So please note down the names of important locations here, such as Alexandria, which is a coastal city here. We spoke about Alexandria Declaration yesterday. This is Cairo, the capital, the Nile River Delta, popular tourist hotspots and historical locations like Giza, Aswan, the Valley of the Kings, right? So all these are very, very important locations in Egypt. So this is something that you need to be aware of. Also make a note of the neighboring countries of Egypt. Take this as a small exercise from my side. Use the map and identify the neighbors of Egypt, the immediate neighbors, and post the names of these countries in the comment section below so you can help other students as well. Now moving on to the third question. Consider the following statements. India's trade deficit with China has crossed the $100 billion mark for the first time ever in 2022. In the past decade, China and US have consistently remained the top two trading partners of India. India has never imposed anti-dumping duties and countervailing duties on Chinese products despite its unfair trade practices. Which of the given statements are correct? This question is actually a slightly difficult question. I've picked this question because UPSC tends to ask such questions based on broad trends and patterns. It actually requires you to remember certain specific data or at least the broad nature of the trade relations of India with other countries. In previous papers, questions on these lines have been asked. For example, if you look at last year's paper, there was a question on Vietnam, which was testing your knowledge about the political system of Vietnam and as well as its economic performance. Now, generally, you don't come across these points. This is something you read about when you go in for an in-depth analysis or in-depth research. So there is a possibility for UPSC to ask such questions. And also India-China trade relations was very much in the news. So that is why I have chosen this question, so you can understand the pattern of trade between India and China and the trade issues that we have. So let's examine this topic in slight detail. See, India-China have a very strong trading relationship. In fact, for India, there is a lot of import dependency on China. This is one of the biggest trading relationships for India. Usually, China is in the top two. Either it's at the second position or at the first position. All right. Now, if you look at the graph given here, it becomes very evident that China and US, they have consistently been in the top two trading partners for India. Some years, it is the US which has had the biggest trading relationship with India in terms of volume of goods that has been traded. Sometimes China has overtaken the US and gone ahead of the United States. So we can fairly say that we can assume, or we can even take a calculated guess, that in the last one decade, in the last 10 years, consistently US or China, they have been in the top two. Either it is US at number 1 and China at number 2, or the other way around. China would have overtaken US to occupy the top spot, followed by the US. So consistently, China, US have been in the top 2 list of trading partners for India in the last 10 years. The data makes it very clear. The UAE, the United Arab Emirates, is usually the third largest trading partner. That is when we are looking at countries. If you include European Union, then the numbers change slightly because EU is often the second or third largest trading partner. Sometimes EU has become the top trading partner as well. But EU is not a country, it's an entire region. So on a country-to-country basis, these are the top 3 trading partners for India. China and US at the top 2, followed by the United Arab Emirates. Now, if you just look at India-China trade relations, there is a very unhealthy trading relationship between the two countries. Because India has an import dependency on China. Most of the essential commodities, essential products, they are sourced from China, whereas we have very little exports towards China. If you take the data of last year, the total trade volume was around $135.98 billion. That's a massive trade relationship. Out of this, Chinese imports accounted for more than 90% of it. Whereas India's exports to China was very, very minimal. We hardly exported around 17.48 billion worth of goods, and the rest, almost 119 billion, was Chinese imports into India. So you can easily understand how unequal this trading relationship is. So there is a huge trade deficit which is against India. It's in favor of China, and the trade deficit is against India. And last year, the trade deficit crossed the $100 billion mark for the first time. Since many years, we have had a big trade deficit with China, but the deficit was around 60, 70, $80 billion. But last year, Indian imports from China has increased to such an extent that the trade deficit crossed the $100 billion mark for the first time in our bilateral trade relationship. Several Indian industries, they have a critical dependency on China. China has emerged as a manufacturing hub, and we have sourced all the essential commodities, goods from China, thereby creating this critical dependency. In fact, it's not just India. Most other countries, even developed countries in the West, even they have a critical dependency on China. If you look at India, sectors like electronics, semiconductors, then pharmaceuticals, especially APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients, then power transformers, mobile and switching equipment. In all these key sectors, even automobiles, in all these sectors, there is a critical dependency on Chinese imports. It's often known that China leverages the trade advantages for geopolitical reasons. The trade benefit that China has, it often misuses that as a leverage for geopolitical reasons to put pressure on its target countries. So this is something that has always worried India. So the only option for us is to scale up our exports. For that, we need to focus on domestic production and manufacturing. That is why India hopes to become self-reliant. That's why initiatives like Atmanirbhar Bharat are launched by the government. The other key point to note here is that China is known for its unfair trade practices. For example, it is known for dumping goods onto other markets. China leverages its manufacturing potential, and it is able to produce on scale. It can bring down the cost of production as it produces on scale. Plus, the Chinese state also gives a lot of subsidies as well to the industries. So they produce at a very cheap cost, and they manage to dump these goods on other markets. Dumping is a practice where the imported commodity is being sold in our market at a lower price than the cost of production in our own market. Now imagine if a foreign product is being sold in our market at a cheaper price than the cost of production of the same product within India, then who will purchase the domestic product? Right? There will be a flood of cheap imports, and everyone will purchase the cheaper foreign product. This will wipe out our domestic industry. So such a practice is called dumping. So to prevent that, under WTO rules, anti-dumping duties can be imposed. India has imposed these duties several times on several Chinese products. Whenever dumping has been detected, whenever such unfair trade practices has been detected, India has levied anti-dumping duties and countervailing duties. This increases the cost of the import, thereby protecting our domestic industry and giving them a chance to compete with the cheaper imports. Is that clear? So based on this, we can easily answer the question. First statement is definitely correct. Trade deficit crossed the $100 billion mark last year. In the past decade, China, US have consistently been the top two trading partners of India. Again, a correct statement. And third statement is wrong. Why? Because it's saying we have never imposed these duties on Chinese products. This is a wrong statement. India has imposed anti-dumping duties and countervailing duties multiple times on Chinese commodities. So statement 3 becomes incorrect. So 1 and 2 only. Option B, again, is the correct answer. 61% have got it right. Very good. See, such questions not just require factual knowledge, it also requires conceptual knowledge. And with some basic common sense, you can get these answers right. Got it? If you have been reading newspapers regularly, if you have been following the trend, if you know the pattern of trade with US and China, based on that, you can still make a calculated guess and get the answer right. So that is why I chose this question. So now let's move on to the fourth question. The ICET, Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, has been recently launched by India, European Union and Japan, India, Japan and Australia, India and the United States, or by the Quad countries. What's the right answer? Let's see how many of you can get this right. The poll is live. Take a few seconds and try and let me know the answer. 81% have said option C. Very good. ICET is another important topic which was trending over the last few months. It's an initiative between India and the United States of America. So let's see what this initiative is all about. See, today, India and US have become strategic partners in almost every domain, be it defense, counterterrorism, be it climate change, healthcare, education, right? In every sector, we have a critical relationship with the US. This is the defining partnership of the 21st century. The world's largest democracy working with one of the world's oldest democracies. So the two countries, they have recently launched a new initiative to collaborate in the field of critical and emerging technologies. This is called ICET, the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies. It was proposed in 2021 and last year it was established. All right. And this year in 2023, the first ICET meet took place between India and US. That is why the topic was in news. At the start of this year, the first ever ICET dialogue was held between the National Security Councils and the National Security Advisors of both the countries. This is another important point to remember. This initiative between India and US is led by the respective National Security Councils. It's headed by the National Security Advisors of both the countries. So India's Ajit Doval, who's the NSA, who heads the National Security Council, met with his American counterpart, Jack Sullivan. So they both held discussions on how India-US can collaborate in the field of critical and emerging technologies. See, the term critical and emerging technologies covers all the latest upcoming technologies. This includes artificial intelligence, robotics, 5G and 6G communication, Internet of Things, big data, quantum computing, and their wide applications across the civilian industry, space industry, defense, etc. All these are critical emerging technologies. Got it? So India, US are forming a joint initiative to collaborate so that their research institutions, their private companies, their startups, the academia from both countries can collaborate and advance the development of these critical emerging technologies. So under the initiative, they have identified 6 areas of cooperation. Please make a note of this. quantum and AI technologies, space technology, semiconductors, advanced telecom, including the upcoming 6G networks, innovation in defense technology and defense research, and in general scientific research and development. These are the key areas of cooperation that have been identified under the ICET initiative. Together, both the countries will innovate and they will leverage each other's strengths to come out with the best possible technologies. So that is why the topic is important. So option C is the correct answer. Now moving on to the fifth question. The fifth question deals with an important international organization called the Universal Postal Union. This body was in the news for a particular reason which is linked with India. So that is why I think you should know about the Universal Postal Union. On such organizations, straightforward factual questions can be asked by UPSC. So consider the following statements with regard to the Universal Postal Union. It was established by the Treaty of Berne of 1874. It is a specialized agency of the UN. India is yet to become a member of this union. These are the three statements. We need to check whether they are correct. Let's see how many of you can get the answer right. The poll has already been made live. Please take a go at it. It's a very small question. You would have read the statements as well. Let's see how many of you can get the answer right. Take a couple of seconds. Most of them are saying A or C. Let's see the final verdict. Look at the options here. 48% have said 1 and 2 only. Majority of them have voted for A. There is a tight competition with C. First, let me give you the right answer because it's a factual topic and then I'll explain the context. Option A is indeed the correct answer. It was established in 1874 by the Treaty of Berne. Berne is in Switzerland. Alright, so that is where the Universal Postal Union is headquartered as well. And it is a specialized agency of the UN. So first two statements are correct. Third statement is wrong. India is yet to become a member of the union is a wrong statement because we have already become a member of this union back in 1800s during the colonial period itself. British India had acceded to the Universal Postal Union. So we have inherited this post-independence as well. So we have been a member since hundreds of years and as a result, third statement becomes wrong. Now let's understand more about this organization, why it was in news, why it is relevant for India. The Universal Postal Union, it basically promotes cooperation between the postal agencies of the member countries. That is the task of the union. It comes out with common policies. It provides for closer integration between postal agencies to enable faster movement of letters and other forms of communication. So India Post has been an active participant with the Universal Postal Union since independence. Is that clear? So this topic was in news as India took over the leadership of a related organization called Asian Pacific Postal Union. This is a regional postal union for the Asia Pacific region where India is located. So India's candidate got elected as the Secretary General of the Asian Pacific Postal Union, which is the only restricted union that is part of Universal Postal Union. The APPU, it's an intergovernmental body of 32 Asia Pacific countries, including India. So India has won an election recently and an Indian official from the Indian Postal Services will be heading this body, this regional body, as the Secretary General for the next 4 years. The Asian Pacific Postal Union holds the only restricted union membership of the Universal Postal Union. It works closely with the global body as well. So that is why this question was picked. Very simple, straightforward question. You should just know the basic facts here. It was established by the Treaty of Berne in 1874. It is a specialized agency of the UN and India joined the Universal Postal Union back in 1876 itself. Is that clear? So the right answer is option A, 1 and 2 only. Now, sixth question. Today we have a lot of conventions, recent partnerships and initiatives. They were all in the news in the last 8 to 12 months. So all these topics are very, very relevant. The Chicago Convention, often seen in news, is related to what? Is it related to diplomatic relations and immunity, persistent organic pollutants, international civil aviation, or cyber crimes? So let's take a look at the context. Let me explain why the topic was in news, what is its relevance for India, and we'll talk about the Chicago Convention in detail. As the title itself indicates, this convention deals with international civil aviation. It provides for a global platform to promote policy coordination between the aviation regulators of different countries. It enables safe and smooth civil aviation around the world. This convention was signed in 1944 and it came into effect in 1947. It was the Chicago Convention which established a key global body, that is the International Civil Aviation Organization. ICAO was established through the Chicago Convention, and this body is also a specialized agency of the United Nations. Very, very important facts. The ICAO is responsible for implementing the Chicago Convention. It is responsible for promoting coordination and cooperation with regard to international civil aviation and air travel. Now the topic was in news because few amendments were carried out to the Chicago Convention. Recently, few global amendments have been proposed and India has approved these amendments as well, as India is a signatory to it. We are part of the Chicago Convention and we are a member of International Civil Aviation Organization. So these amendments which have been brought out recently, they were approved by India. India's Union Cabinet, headed by the Prime Minister, recently approved 3 amendments to the Chicago Convention. That is why the topic is very important. All right, in February 2023, the Union Cabinet approved these 3 amendments. Please take a look. Article 3 of the Chicago Convention has been amended. It says that it essentially provides for members to refrain from using weapons against civilian aircraft while they are in flight. It prohibits the states from using weapons against civilian aircraft while they are in flight. Article 50 Clause A has been amended for raising strength of International Civil Aviation Organization from current 36 members to 40 members. The number of countries which are part of it is being increased. Article 56 also has been amended for raising strength of Air Navigation Commission from 18 to 21. Air Navigation Commission lays down the navigation standards for aircraft, for civilian aircraft. So this is a body within International Civil Aviation Organization. So the number of countries participating here also has been increased from 18 to 21. Now see, you don't have to remember the amendments exactly. UPSC may not focus much on that, but it's good to have awareness. But the question would most likely be on Chicago Convention and International Civil Aviation Organization. This is where you need to focus upon. So it essentially provides for a set of global standards and rules for navigation, aircraft operations, aircraft registration, safety and security of civil aviation, etc. All the member countries are obliged to follow these standards so that international air travel can become safe and secure and it can contribute to global economic growth. Is that clear? So the correct answer is option C. Chicago Convention is related to international civil aviation. Now, the other 3 options given here are also equally important. I want you guys to take a guess on which exactly is the convention dealing with the options given here. Let's see how many of you know this. Which is the global convention dealing with diplomatic relations and immunity? Even this convention was in news in the last 1 year. That is why I have chosen this for option A. Let me know in the comments, which is the global convention that provides for diplomatic relations and immunity? Very good. It's the Vienna Convention. The Vienna Convention was recently in news because Indian consulates, Indian embassy and high commissions abroad, they were attacked by pro-Khalistan elements. The Indian High Commission in London, Indian consulate in Melbourne and Brisbane, Indian consulates in San Francisco, they were all attacked by pro-Khalistan elements during the latest crisis that happened in Punjab. So during this, India reminded these countries, India reminded US, UK and Australia of their obligations to protect our embassy premises and our diplomats, because it's a duty, it's an obligation of every country under the Vienna Convention that deals with diplomatic relations and immunity. Next, persistent organic pollutants, POPs, which is the convention. There is a very important environment related convention for this. Good, some of you are getting it right. It is the Stockholm Convention. The Stockholm Convention on POPs, or persistent organic pollutants. These are organic chemicals which are hazardous pollutants, and they are persistent in the environment. They don't break down easily. They remain in the environment for decades and centuries together, causing harm to the environment. So they are categorized as POPs, persistent organic pollutants, and they are dealt with separately under the Stockholm Convention. The last one, cyber crimes. Which is the international convention? There is a global level convention to deal with cyber crimes, to promote cooperation to deal with cyber crimes. Benazir and Kavi and Shreya have got it right, and few others. It is the Budapest Convention. The Budapest Convention that's brought out by the Council of Europe. Please note down this point. It's very important because India has not joined the Budapest Convention on security grounds. Even though India faces a lot of cyber crimes, we haven't signed on to the Budapest Convention because we have security concerns about joining this convention. The Intelligence Bureau has opposed India's entry into Budapest Convention. Because if you join Budapest Convention, you not only have to cooperate with other countries in tackling cyber crimes, you'll also have to integrate your networks, interconnect your cyberspace as well. So based on national security grounds, IB has opposed India's membership. So India has not joined the Budapest Convention. So that is a topic in news as well. So these other three conventions as well are equally important for the exam. That is why I have included them in the question itself. So through one question, we have addressed 4 topics, right? So that is how you effectively study for the prelims exam as well. Next, question number 7. The Fab 4 Semiconductor Alliance is made up of which countries? Another important topic which was recently in news. Take a look at the options. US, UK, European Union and Canada. US, India, Japan and UK. US, Taiwan, Japan and South Korea. US, European Union, ASEAN Group and Australia. Let me explain this initiative so that you can understand in what context has this alliance been formed. The Fab 4 Semiconductor Alliance, it's also called the Chip 4 Alliance. I hope you know that semiconductors, which are critical in various industries, be it electronics, be it space, defense, nuclear, so across many civilian domains and strategic domains, semiconductors play a critical role. They are also referred to as chips, semiconductor chips, and the semiconductor wafers which are manufactured, right? The technical term often used is fabrication. The semiconductor wafer chips, they are fabricated. So that's why the term Fab 4 Alliance or Chip 4 Alliance. 4 top semiconductor producing countries have come together to form this alliance. Is that clear? There are 4 key members. It's also referred to as the US East Asia Semiconductor Supply Chain Resilience Working Group. Now in the graph that I've added here, you can figure out which are the top semiconductor producing countries of the world. You have United States producing 13% of the semiconductor demand, Japan 17%, European Union and other countries including India around 15%, South Korea almost at the top at 19%, but the biggest producer is Taiwan at 20%. Of course, Taiwan is not a country, but still Taiwan is the world's biggest producer of semiconductor chips, and China at another 16%. China also has a high degree of control on the global supply chain of semiconductors. If you guys remember, in the previous session, I did speak about the shortage of semiconductors that were created because of the COVID-19 pandemic. How the disruption in global supply chains caused a massive shortage of semiconductor chips, how it affected multiple other industries. So this was a wake-up call for other countries. Because see, semiconductor chips have a strategic geopolitical angle behind them. It's critical not just for various industries, it is crucial in many strategic domains, including space, nuclear, defense, etc. So those who control the production and supply chain of semiconductors, they have a leverage in geopolitics. China, even though it produces just around 16% of the semiconductors, it does have a greater degree of control on the supply chain itself. So that is the reason why like-minded countries are coming together to counter China. They want to make the supply chain resilient to such supply shocks and also to reduce dependency on China. So US took the lead along with Taiwan. US and Taiwan together formed this initiative. That's why it's called US East Asia Semiconductor Supply Chain Resilience Working Group. The other top producers, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and US, these four have come together to form this alliance so that they can counter China's dominance in this strategic domain. They can build supply chain resilience, ensure the security and stability of the semiconductor market. And that's why they are even referring to these semiconductor chips as the so-called democracy chips. As these four territories, I'm using the word territories because Taiwan is not a country, right? These four represent democratic states. They are like-minded democracies, whereas China is an authoritarian communist state. So they're referring to the alliance as democracy chips as well. It's also called Chip 4 Alliance or Fab 4 Semiconductor Alliance. Got it? So this explains the economic and geopolitical importance of this alliance. So the right answer would be option C. The United States, one of the top chip producers, along with three top East Asian producers of semiconductor chips. That's Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea. These four have set up the Fab 4 Semiconductor Alliance. Majority of them again have got it right, 75%. Very good. Next, question number 8. The Global Biofuel Alliance is being established by which of these countries? As I told you at the beginning, today we have a number of alliances, partnerships, and initiatives in news. Because last year, honestly, it's been quite incredible. There have been plenty of new initiatives that have been started, and they're all very important for the exams. That's why I'm trying to cover as many as possible, so you don't have to go back and waste your time in revising them again. Just attend the session, revise the topics given here. It is more than enough. Trust me, any question you will be able to answer in your upcoming prelims. If you feel the same level of confidence, thanks to these sessions, do let us know in the comments. Do like the video, share it with other aspirants as well. So which of these countries have set up the Global Biofuel Alliance? The answer is India, United States, and Brazil. These three countries, they happen to be the world's largest producers and consumers of biofuels. That is fuel produced through biological sources and processes. Biofuel is often seen as an alternate fuel for fossil fuels. So the top producers and consumers happen to be India, Brazil, and US. So these three countries have come together to form this partnership. It is actually linked with the upcoming G20 summit. In the G20 summit, under the energy segment, lot of focus is being given for promoting the adoption of biofuels. Biofuels are seen as relatively cleaner than fossil fuels, your traditional fossil fuels. They are seen as more sustainable as well and cost friendly as well. So India, US, Brazil are forming this alliance to promote a global partnership to increase the production and adoption of biofuels. This initiative will work closely with other like-minded countries, with other developed and developing countries, which are also looking to produce more biofuels and use more biofuels in their industry. They will all be brought together under this partnership, and they will create a facilitating arrangement. They will facilitate the funds needed, the investments, the technology, the resources. Through this global partnership, they will streamline the production and adoption of biofuels. It will work closely with other existing initiatives, such as the Clean Energy Ministerial Biofuture Platform, Mission Innovation Bioenergy Initiatives, Global Bioenergy Partnership. These are other related initiatives in the field of biofuels. So this new initiative, the alliance being formed by these three countries, it will coordinate and work with the other existing initiatives. This is in line with the commitments that have been made to the Paris Agreement, to the Convention on Biological Diversity, because it does provide for a sustainable path. It does provide for relatively cleaner energies to bring down emissions and tackle pollution as well. Is that clear? So India, US and Brazil have launched this initiative just a couple of months ago. So option B becomes your correct answer. India, Brazil and US. Clear? 41% have got it right. Most of them have got it right, but still there is some confusion. Some of them have said it is D, some have said it is C, but please mark the right answer. It is B, India, Brazil and the US. Next, question number 9. Inclusive Forum on Carbon Mitigation Approaches, or IFCMA, was recently started by which group or which organization? Was it started by the UN Environment Programme, the UNEP, or the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, OECD, the Organization of European Cooperation and Development, or the UNDP, the UN Development Programme? Of course, the question is factual, it's pretty straightforward, but you should know what is this inclusive forum. What does it deal with? Who started this? What's the agenda behind it? And what is India's equation with it? If you can understand all these related facts, any question on the topic, you will be able to answer. The Inclusive Forum on Carbon Mitigation Approaches was recently launched by OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's one of the important regional economic organizations that is focused on Europe. It brings together some of the developed industrialized economies of Western Europe, and OECD is headquartered at Paris. So it's a grouping of industrialized developed European economies. So this platform has launched a new forum to focus on carbon mitigation approaches. What do you mean by mitigation? Mitigation is to reduce. Mitigation is one of the key pillars of the Climate Change Convention. One of the key focus areas under Climate Change Convention, under the Paris Agreement, is to mitigate emissions. That is to reduce the emissions and mitigate the impact of climate change, reduce the impact of the disasters and the other extreme weather events which are increasing because of climate change. So mitigation is a key pillar in Climate Change Convention. So OECD has launched this new forum to study the carbon mitigation policies of other countries, to compare them and to take stock of the extent of reduction in greenhouse gas emissions that is arising out of these mitigation policies of various countries. Is that clear? It's almost like a study. It will evaluate the mitigation policies of various countries. Now, India, for example, has a mitigation policy in place. Under the National Action Plan on Climate Change and the commitments we have made to Paris Agreement, we are focusing on mitigation efforts to reduce our emissions. We are focusing on afforestation, replacing dirty fuel with clean and renewable forms of energy, especially solar and wind, nuclear, etc. Through all these measures, India is planning to mitigate carbon emissions, to reduce and bring down carbon emissions. We are planning to take measures to protect our population, the vulnerable population, against the impact of climate change and disasters. So all of this has been listed out in our policy, in our mitigation policy. So every country will have similar policies and OECD will study that. Through this forum, it's going to examine the global mitigation efforts and the policies, and it will try to create valuable lessons from that. It will try to draw some lessons from that so that we can know where we stand. We can know what other interventions have to be planned. So this will be an inclusive forum that OECD will create. It will bring all other countries together. Even India participated in this forum. That's why the topic is important. That's why I chose the topic as well. It's linked with climate action and India is a participant. So when OECD launched the platform recently, India was also invited and India also participated in this inclusive forum. It essentially takes stock of the global mitigation efforts, evaluates the mitigation policies of various countries and sees the final results. Whether these policies are yielding results, what is the extent of mitigation that is happening, to what extent greenhouse gas emissions are being brought down. That will be studied, and the data, the methodology that will be developed will be crucial to fine-tune our approach towards climate action. It will help us understand where we are going wrong, what else can be done, what is a better intervention. So that is why this forum is important, and it is relevant from India's point of view because we have also been invited and India has participated in this new forum which was held recently. So the correct answer is option C, OECD. Let's see how many of you got it right. 44%. Again, some are divided between B and A because obviously some would have assumed that it is carbon mitigation, it will deal with UNEP or IPCC. Never be under that assumption, right? This is where you should have clear factual knowledge if you have to answer this question. So it's an initiative by OECD. So never make a blind guess. Calculated guess is fine. Sometimes you will have some partial information. Based on that, you eliminate some options and you make a calculated guess. That is fine. But never make a blind guess in the exam. Let's say you know nothing about the topic. Don't assume that it's already linked with something else. Don't ever do that mistake. It's better to leave such questions instead of losing marks because there is negative marking, 1/3 negative marking. If you know something about it, then you make a calculated guess. That is different. Yes, in some questions we have to make a calculated guess, but don't make a blind guess. Never ever do that. You'll simply lose marks. Next, question number 10, a very big question. I've chosen this deliberately because once in a while, UPSC does ask such text-heavy questions. It'll actually take you 3-4 minutes to just read the question. In previous papers, if you go through them, you will see that there have been such questions that have come up, very factual, but text-heavy. You have to read a lot, think and process, and then answer the question. All right? It deals with International Maritime Organization and the safety of ships, safety of maritime communication. The question says, International Maritime Organization or IMO has adopted a new mandatory code, international code of safety for ships carrying industrial personnel that will enter into force on 1st July 2024. This international code for safety of ships for carrying industrial personnel, it is also called IP code. It is abbreviated in short as the IP code, Industrial Personnel Code. I'll explain what this is. The International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, or the SOLAS Convention, it's an international maritime treaty that sets minimum safety standards in the construction, equipment and operation of merchant ships. The IMO Convention requires signatory flag states to ensure that ships flagged by them comply with at least these standards. So 3 very factual statements. It was in news, it was in current affairs. So if you have read about it, if you can remember that, then definitely you can answer such a question. All right. So here the key is to carefully read the question, understand and process what the question is asking. And based on your current affairs knowledge, you have to arrive at an answer. All right, so let's see what this topic is all about. Let's understand the IP code, the SOLAS convention, and the IMO. All three are very important topics. The IMO has indeed adopted this new safety code. Recently, the International Code of Safety for Ships Carrying Industrial Personnel, or the IP code, has been adopted. It will come into force from 1st July 2024. Now, what is this IP code? Why is it necessary? See, of late, offshore projects have increased around the world. What do you mean by offshore projects? Projects which are carried out in the sea. That is off the shore projects. Projects on land are called onshore projects. If any large projects are executed in the seas and the oceans, they are called offshore projects. For example, oil rigs, wind energy projects. Correct? These are some popular examples of offshore projects. Such offshore projects have increased because there is greater investments coming in, especially in the renewable energy sector, that is for generating wind energy in the seas and the oceans. Since there is tremendous wind energy potential in the open seas and the oceans, wind turbines are installed in the open seas. So to set up these facilities, you need a lot of personnel. You need skilled professionals to be taken into the open seas. They have to stay there for days together, weeks together to execute the project and come back. So it's a very harsh working environment. It's a very harsh working condition that these workers face. Even those who work on oil rigs, it's a very challenging work environment for them. So to ensure the safe transfer of these industrial personnel to offshore projects through ships, a safety code was necessary, and it has been brought out by the IMO. Is that clear? It's as simple as that. Of late, offshore projects have increased. Hundreds of workers are being deployed in open seas and oceans to execute these projects, especially wind energy projects. They are very risky deployments. You're deploying these people for days and weeks together in the open seas, so their safety, their well-being is of utmost importance. So the manner in which they should be transported, their safety standards, how they should be brought back, those safety shipping standards have been laid down through the IP code, Industrial Personnel Code, which is a code for safety as far as shipping, maritime shipping is concerned. Got it? So it's been brought out by the IMO. It applies for large cargo ships, high-speed cargo craft that transport and accommodate industrial personnel working on such offshore projects. That is why the topic was in news. Related to that, we have the SOLAS Convention and the IMO. SOLAS Convention is the mother convention. It stands for Safety of Life at Sea. This is a global convention that is implemented by the IMO. It ensures a set of safety standards to protect lives at open seas and oceans. Is that clear? Because around the world, large cargo ships and other crafts and vessels are carrying thousands and thousands of people. Ensuring their safety is of utmost importance because shipping accidents, disasters are quite common. So that is why this convention was adopted, the SOLAS Convention, which stands for Safety of Life at Sea, the International Convention for Safety of Life at Sea. The first version of this was brought out in 1914 after the Titanic disaster. That is what set the precedent. After the Titanic incident, that is when the first convention was brought out for safety of life at sea. This has been amended several times, at least 4 times. It has gone through major amendments, and today you have a refined version of this treaty to ensure the safety of merchant ships, that is civilian vessels and ships that are carrying people on board. All right? Not just passengers, even for the crew, even for the personnel who are being transported through the sea. That is the main objective of the SOLAS Convention. It gives a set of safety standards to be followed by governments, shipping companies, and all other concerned stakeholders. The port authorities, the shipping ministry, other regulators, even security agencies like the navies and the coast guards, and the private shipping firms, they all have responsibilities and obligations under this international convention. Got it? It is enforced by the IMO, International Maritime Organization, which is a specialized agency of the UN established in 1948 at Geneva, and it's headquartered in London. There are 175 member countries and 3 associate members. Some basic straightforward facts which could be important for IMO. Alright, so please make a note of these basic facts and understand that all the countries, the flag states, that is ships, they carry a flag where they are registered, right? So ships will be flagged with different national identities based on where they have been registered. So those countries under whose jurisdiction the ships have been flagged, they have the obligation to enforce these standards, these safety standards and requirements on the cargo vessels and other ships. Got it? The IMO implements this and enforces this. So now we can try and answer the question. The first statement is correct. Second and third statements are also correct. All 3 given statements are correct, and option D becomes the correct answer. As I told you, it's a very factual question, but it requires a careful reading of the question. You should be able to recollect what you have read and check whether it's correct or not. So it's actually a test of your comprehension skills. So that is why UPSC gives this as a trick question in between. There will be 1 or 2 such questions which are very lengthy, text heavy questions, so you spend more time in reading it, right? And if you're not well prepared, you might panic and you might mark the wrong answer. But if you're calm, if you're able to just recollect what you have read, then you will be able to get the right answer because it's a very factual question. Next, a match the following type of question. Which of the following are correctly matched? I want you guys to give the answer. On the left, we have a set of Indian rescue missions, evacuation missions, and disaster management missions matched with countries where these missions were carried out. You need to see whether they are correctly matched. Operation Ganga has been matched with Afghanistan, Operation Dost matched with Sudan, Devi Shakti with Ukraine, Operation Kaveri with Turkey. Which of them are correctly matched? Let's see how many of you get it right. All these missions, they were in the news in the last 1 year or 1.5 to 2 years. All of them are very critical missions. So one should be aware of these important evacuation missions and emergency response missions that India has carried out. So most of them are saying option D is the correct answer, none of the above. Okay, let's check. Let's see if you have got it right. Operation Ganga was India's evacuation mission in Ukraine that was carried out last year after Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022. Around 20,000 Indian nationals were stuck. Most of them were Indian students, medical students. So to rescue them, Indian Air Force along with Commercial Airlines of India, with coordination of Ministry of External Affairs, had to carry out this emergency evacuation called Operation Ganga. Alright, so all the Indians were brought back safely from the Ukrainian war zone. So clearly first one is incorrectly matched. Next, Operation Dost. Do you know which country it was? Operation Dost was in which country? Even this was recently in news. Ukraine, no. Sudan, no. Yemen, wrong answer. It was in Turkey. Very few have got it right. Operation Dost was in Turkey and Syria. Recently, Turkey and Syria were hit by a devastating earthquake. So India sent out a HADR mission. HADR stands for Humanitarian Assistance and Disaster Relief. That is the technical term in disaster management. As India specializes in disaster management, we give out HADR support to other countries. We send emergency teams to carry out search and rescue operations. We have a highly specialized force, that is the NDRF, along with our armed forces. So India deployed multiple contingents, both in Turkey and Syria under Operation Dost, to help out these countries in conducting search and rescue operations and in providing immediate relief like medical assistance, food supplies to those who were affected by the devastating earthquake. So second one is also incorrectly matched. Next, Operation Devi Shakti. Which country was it? I can see some of you have already given the answer in the comments. Devi Shakti was in Afghanistan in 2021 when Taliban captured power in Afghanistan and toppled the civilian government. It triggered a massive refugee crisis and several Indians were stuck as well. So this was another mission of the Indian Air Force to evacuate Indians and friends of India, Afghan friends of India. So this was Operation Devi Shakti. It was another challenging mission. Then finally, the latest one, Operation Kaveri, which has hit the headlines because of the civil war in Sudan. Just a couple of weeks ago, as Sudan descended into chaos and a civil war, thousands of Indians were trapped, almost 4,000 Indians. It also included a very unique indigenous tribe, the Hakki-Pikki tribe from Karnataka. So they had to be rescued by the Indian Navy and Indian Air Force through Saudi Arabia, through Port Sudan and Jeddah via the Red Sea. And this was another challenging evacuation mission. So all four are incorrectly matched. So option D is indeed the correct answer, none of the above. See, India has a lot of expertise in this domain, as we have a very vibrant diaspora in almost every country, as we discussed yesterday. Every now and then, Indians get caught in such conflict zones. Their safety, their well-being will be under threat. So it's the duty of the Indian government to come to their rescue and to carry out their safe evacuation. We have been doing this from last 30 plus years. India has actually built up expertise in this domain. These missions are very challenging because they are a logistical nightmare. To pull out so many nationals, that too from a conflict zone or a disaster-hit zone, it's not an easy task. It requires immense diplomatic influence. It requires financial resources, military assets. You should have military vessels, naval vessels, large transport aircrafts, which you can deploy to faraway regions. You'll have to work your contacts with multiple countries to take their help and get their assistance to work out a passage route so you can pull out the Indian nationals. For example, while pulling out Indians in Ukraine, our ties with the neighboring countries was critical. Poland, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria and Russia, Ukraine, they all helped India to create a corridor for Indians to be pulled out into these countries. During Operation Kaveri in Sudan, Saudi Arabia and UAE played a critical role. They are very good friends of India. India leveraged that influence and used Jeddah, the port city in Saudi Arabia, to launch the missions into Sudan across the Red Sea. So without these ties, these influences, these military assets, you won't be able to execute these complex missions. So India has a great track record in this domain. In Kuwait, back in 1990, almost 1.6 lakh Indians, 1.7 lakh Indians were trapped when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. This was the beginning of the Gulf War. So India had to carry out a massive airlift by working with Iraq and Kuwait and other countries. Saddam Hussein was a good friend of India. India was a big purchaser of Iraqi oil. Even today we are. So using those ties, we managed to secure a passage for Indians, and through commercial aircraft, we pulled out Indians from Kuwait. This was the world's biggest airlift until recently. Then in 2006, in Lebanon descended into a civil war and 5,000 Indians were trapped. So India carried out Operation Sukoon to rescue the Indians and few other friendly foreign nationals. Indian Navy was deployed to Lebanon to bring back these Indians. In 2011, Libya went into a civil war. Close to 15,000 Indians, mainly Indian nurses, were stuck in Libya. Libya is a very far away African country. Through Operation Safe Homecoming, India managed to successfully bring back all those who were trapped. Then 2015, Yemen descended into a civil war as Houthi rebels, sponsored by Iran, triggered a civil war in the country. 5,000 Indians were trapped and India carried out Operation Rahat. And through Operation Rahat, we not only brought back the Indians to safety, but we also rescued several foreign nationals from friendly countries. This was another successful mission of India. All right, so we have considerable expertise in carrying out such missions, and you should always remember such operations. It could be a prelims question. Another such operation is Operation Maitri in Nepal in 2015. Nepal was hit by a devastating earthquake. We gave disaster management assistance under Operation Maitri and also rescued several Indians who were trapped in Nepal. Then of course you have Vande Bharat mission and Operation Samudra Setu that we carried out recently during the pandemic. The Vande Bharat mission and Operation Samudra Setu to bring back Indians who were trapped around the world during the pandemic. Today this happens to be the biggest evacuation in human history. All right, so that is why the topic is important, and option D here is the correct answer. Moving on to the 12th question. Jaipur Declaration seen recently in news is related to what? Is it a global solar power grid led by India under the International Solar Alliance? Is it a railway security strategy brought out by the International Union of Railways, or a joint declaration of SCO members on the Afghan security situation, or a commitment of BIMSTEC countries to promote conservation of heritage sites? The poll is live. Go ahead and give me the answer first. Again, a straightforward question, but if you haven't come across the topic, if you haven't revised this, there is no way you can answer this question. All right, so it was recently in news, so UPSC might pick this topic. So let's see how many of you know what is the Jaipur Declaration. What does it deal with? Let's end the poll. Let's see how many of you have got it right. 38% have said option A. Very sorry, most of you have got it wrong then. The right answer is option B. It's a railway security strategy brought out by International Union of Railways. Please note down the correct answer. This was actually a little obscure topic. It didn't capture global headlines, but it was reported somewhere in the corner of newspapers. That's why I was certain that most of you would have missed the topic. Majority of them, that's why I didn't get the right answer. Very few gave option B as the right answer. Jaipur Declaration deals with railway security. India recently organized a conference on railway protection and railway safety. It was the 18th UIC World Security Congress that was held at Jaipur in Rajasthan. India hosted this conference. All right, India's Railway Protection Force organized this event along with the International Union of Railways, which is abbreviated as UIC. This brought together railway protection agencies from around the world, and they adopted the Jaipur Declaration. This document comes out with various standards, technologies, and methods that can be used to improve railway security. Is that clear? See, today railways is a key lifeline for transportation around the world. Since many centuries, railways has been the lifeline of almost every country to transport goods and cargo, to transport people, to transport troops and weapons, right? You name it, railways plays a critical role in transporting those items and commodities. But railways are at great risk. They face a number of threats. There's a lot of risk with regard to its safety. There could be terror attacks, there could be robberies, sexual assaults and molestations, kidnapping of women and children who are traveling through railways. These are very common security threats. Plus, trains could suffer from accidents. That's another major safety issue due to fault in the tracks or in the design of the train or the speed at which it was traveling, the way in which railway traffic is managed. Right? Depending on all these factors, there could be train accidents where hundreds of people could get injured and killed. This is a very common occurrence, not just in developing and underdeveloped countries, even in developed nations, there are frequent train accidents. For example, take the recent cargo train accident in the US at a place called Palestine in the United States. It led to a chemical disaster. A very dangerous, harmful chemical was leaked, causing a chemical incident in the US. European countries are frequently hit by train accidents. Spain, Italy, Greece, they've all seen multiple train accidents where many people are killed and injured. So this is a problem that affects multiple countries. That is why there is a need for a global set of standards. So Railway Protection Force of India organized this World Security Congress along with the International Union of Railways to develop this global standard in railway safety and security, which can be adopted by other countries. The main focus was emerging technologies, how we can leverage artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, to make railway transportation more safe and secure. Is that clear? Through AI technology, you can solve many problems related to railway safety and security. You can provide for facial recognition to tackle crimes, to identify missing people, kidnapped persons. You can use advanced sensors that are interlinked, which is basically IoT, Internet of Things technology, to communicate vital information, right? And ensure that railway accidents are minimized, to keep track of the health of the track and the train wagon itself. So all such technologies are being explored. They're being implemented as well around the world, and the processes, the technologies are being shared with different countries, so we can all adopt similar standards of railway safety and security. So that is the reason behind this Congress, and at the end of the summit, the Jaipur Declaration was adopted. So the correct answer is option B. Is that clear? Next, question number 13. NORMS, which is an acronym for New Orientation for Reformed Multilateral System, being pursued by India, deals with what? In the last couple of years, this term has been frequently reported in newspapers. If you have read editorials and columns in the Hindu or the Indian Express, I am sure you would have come across this acronym, NORMS, N-O-R-M-S. It expands for New Orientation for Reformed Multilateral System. This is one strategy that India has been pursuing in the last couple of years. So what does it deal with? Does it deal with UN reforms, renewed targets under Paris Agreement of Climate Change Convention, restructuring of the WTO, resizing the voting share at World Bank and IMF? What's the correct answer? Again, I want you guys to take the initiative. Take a couple of seconds and let me know the answer. We'll end the poll very soon. Let's see how many of you can get it right. 46% have said option A, UN reforms. Very good. This is the correct answer. NORMS is a push being given by India for reforming the United Nations. We spoke about this topic in detail in the first class, in the first session. I explained why India is pushing for UN reforms. What's the need to reform the UN? What are the problems we are facing with the UN? The elite nature of UN Security Council, how all powers are concentrated in the hands of the UNSC, that too in the hands of P5, the permanent 5 countries. The question of veto power. Why are they given veto power? They can derail every resolution by using their veto. The equation between UN General Assembly and UN Security Council, right? UNGA is a democratic body where all countries are having representation, they all have equal vote, but UNGA does not have all the powers. All powers have been vested with UNSC, which is an elite body of 15 countries, and within that 5 countries are permanent members holding all the powers to themselves. There are questions about the geographical quota-based representation. There are questions about the relevance of the UN itself, the way in which it deals with global issues. So according to India and other like-minded countries such as Japan, Brazil, Germany, they all believe that the UN is an outdated organization. They believe that UN is still rooted in the reality of World War II of 1945. That is when UN was set up. Even though the world has changed, global geopolitics has changed, many new powers have emerged, the UN has remained the same. So India's argument is very simple, that the United Nations is stuck in the World War era. It does not reflect current geopolitical realities. So this is what India has been campaigning for. We are pushing for reforms of the UN, and we came out with this approach called norms, NORMS, when India became a non-permanent member in 2021. Remember, I told you in the first class that India held a non-permanent seat for 2 years from 2021 to 2022. So during India's term at the UN, at the UNSC as a non-permanent member, we championed this cause, that is norms, NORMS, new orientation for a reformed multilateral system. Through this, India was pushing for a debate within UNSC for reforming the multilateral institution, especially in the subject of maintaining international peace and security. This is one of the key mandates of the UN and the UNSC. But UNSC has failed spectacularly in upholding international peace and security. For example, UNSC has been irrelevant in Ukraine, in Afghanistan, and in every other conflict zone. It has failed terribly when it comes to upholding peace and security. So that is why India pushed for an open debate on the topic through the norms approach, and we wanted the focus to be on 3 pillars, that is peace and security, development, because UN is focused on the development agenda, the socio-economic development agenda, and the question of human rights. These are 3 major issues that UN looks at. These are 3 primary objectives of the UN. In all the 3 domains, UN has fallen short. When it comes to the question of human rights, look at Myanmar, look at Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria. In all these conflict zones, the UN has failed in upholding human rights. When it comes to developmental issues, be it climate change, sustainable development, the SDG goals, here as well, UN has not been very proactive. It has not seen much success. Developed countries, powerful countries have misused the UN. So that is why India is pushing for a reform of the organization through this approach called norms. This was an Indian initiative to push a debate on these topics and call for changes in the multilateral organization. Alright? It stands for new orientation, a new approach for a reformed multilateral system. The UN is a multilateral system. So the whole idea was to take up that approach to reform the United Nations. That was the whole idea behind it. So the correct answer is, of course, option A. So sometimes in newspapers, such terms are mentioned, but it might skip your attention. This is where you have to pay attention when you're reading the articles. Alright? We didn't have a detailed article on this. There wasn't a separate article on this topic. But within some important editorials and columns, this key word had been mentioned a couple of times. Now only those students who have paid attention to the topic, read everything clearly, only they would have noticed that this is an important keyword. They would have done some extra research to figure out what this exactly was. So unless and until you do that, you will be struggling to answer such questions. Even though it was in current affairs, you might miss out because UPSC will focus on such topics. Is that clear? So now we have covered this topic as well. So let's move on to question number 14. India hosted the International Lusophone Festival for what purpose? For promoting Indian classical music in European countries, for furthering India's ties in Portuguese-speaking countries, for enhancing market access for Indian drugs in Latin America, strengthening cultural ties with Indian community in the Caribbean. So what was the focus of India? What was the objective of India in organizing this festival? It was recently hosted by India. Let's see how many of you get the answer right. Meanwhile, let's look at the explanation. It's another important topic and a big topic. The International Lusophone Festival was organized by India at Goa. Specifically, Goa was chosen because Goa is a former Portuguese colony. The term Lusophone refers to those countries where the Portuguese language is still spoken. Is that clear? In fact, there is a global grouping of Portuguese-speaking countries. Most of them are former Portuguese colonies. So they have this group called the Lusophone countries or the Lusophone Commonwealth. It's also called Community of Portuguese Language Countries, CPLP. This is a grouping that brings together Portugal, the European colonial power, former colonial power, with its former colonies where the Portuguese language is still widely spoken. Got it? This is similar to the British Commonwealth. For example, all former British colonies like India, Pakistan, Canada, Australia, they're all part of the British Commonwealth, right? These are the English-speaking countries. Similarly, the French colonies, under the leadership of France, the former colonial power, they have a grouping. There's a grouping of Francophonie countries, the organization of Francophonie countries, where the French language is still spoken in all these former French colonies. Similarly, to keep up those colonial cultural ties and the common linguistic link, these Portuguese-speaking countries have formed this group called Lusophone countries or the Lusophone Commonwealth. Now, India has taken a landmark initiative. It's a very unique, creative approach by India. Previously, we had never paid attention to this particular domain. So, in a novel diplomatic step, India has reached out to the Lusophone countries and we hosted the International Lusophone Festival. Why? Because Goa is linked with Portuguese culture. It was a former Portuguese colony. At one point, India-Portugal relations were completely destroyed when India pushed the Portuguese out. I hope you know that Goa was captured by India, it was annexed by India by fighting a brief conflict with Portugal. This was right after India's independence, right? So at that point in 1960, Portugal had cut off its ties with India. It had declared India as an enemy state and Portugal had broken its ties with India. But over the years, India-Portugal relations have improved. And today, India wants to reach out not just to Portugal, but to several other countries where the Portuguese language is still spoken. Now, this is important because in the southern hemisphere, Portuguese is the second biggest language. Please make a note. In the southern hemisphere, even today, Portuguese is the most widely spoken language. I beg your pardon, it's not the second largest, it is the largest. Portuguese is the largest language. It has the largest number of speakers in the southern hemisphere, that is below the equator. So to work closely with these countries and to build our cultural diplomatic ties, India has held this festival. All right? So look at the members of the Lusophone Commonwealth. It has Angola, which is an African country over here, Brazil, the large South American country, a close friend of India, Cabo Verde, Guinea-Bissau, Mozambique, Portugal itself, Sao Tome and Principe, Timor-Leste and Equatorial Guinea. All these are members of the Lusophone Commonwealth. So to work closely with them, with all these Portuguese territories, India has reached out to this through this festival, through this cultural festival that was held in Goa. Goa forms the common link between India, Portugal and all these territories. That is what we are exploiting here. It's a soft power diplomacy approach and that is the reason why the topic is very important. It was a very unique initiative. It was recently organized, so the topic is relevant for the exam. So what's the correct answer? Option B, furthering India's ties in Portuguese speaking countries. Many of you have got it right. 58% have given the right answer. Moving on, question number 15. Consider the following with regard to India-Japan relations. Another important bilateral relationship. Recently, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida paid a visit to India. A lot of new agreements and initiatives were announced. Plus, historically, India-Japan have a very strong relationship. So there are some basic facts that you need to be aware of. There can be a straightforward prelims question. India-Japan have established a 2+2 dialogue between the defense and foreign ministers. In 2015, Japan joined the Malabar Naval Exercise as a permanent member. The two countries are still negotiating a free trade agreement. Which of the statements are correct? You need to check how many of the given statements are correct. That's a new format of question that UPSC has been asking. So just let me take you through the brief of India-Japan relations, a brief summary. So we can cover these key points, you'll have a comprehensive understanding and you can easily answer the question as well. Japan traditionally has been very friendly towards India. After the World War ended, right? Imperial Japan was brought down by the Allied powers, right? As US dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Imperial Japan was defeated and it officially brought the World War to an end. Since then, Japan has been a Western ally. The US imposed a pacifist constitution on Japan. Considering the atrocities Japan had committed as a fascist imperial power along with Nazi Germany and Italy, it was stripped of its armed forces. It couldn't possess armed forces anymore. It couldn't take up aggression against another country. It couldn't attack any other country. Such a pacifist constitution was imposed on Japan to ensure that Japan doesn't threaten the world again. In return, the US guaranteed the security of Japan. And Japan later developed self-defense forces. Even today, Japan does not have regular armed forces like India or other countries. It only has self-defense forces, which means they can only defend Japan against an external threat. Japan cannot be the aggressor, it cannot launch wars against another country. It's all because of the pacifist constitution, and recently even this has been in news. A few leaders in Japan recently, like Shinzo Abe, who was assassinated, and few other leaders, they have spoken about the need to amend the constitution so that Japan can also develop its own armed forces considering the threat China is posing for Japan. I hope you know that China and Japan have a standing maritime dispute over Senkaku-Diaoyu Islands. The Senkaku-Diaoyu Islands, it's a disputed island located in the East China Sea. Here China has been very aggressive against Japan. The Chinese Navy, Air Force, they keep intercepting Japanese vessels and aircraft, thus blocking their freedom of navigation, which is a violation of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. So Japan faces a serious threat from China, also from North Korea, as we discussed yesterday. North Korea, which has developed nuclear weapons and keeps testing ballistic missiles, is a threat to Japan as well. So this is what Japan faces in the Pacific, a direct challenge from China and North Korea. But since independence, Japan, which was eager to correct its World War image, started giving out a lot of development assistance to other countries. Japan became one of the key sponsors for India through its ODA program, Overseas Development Assistance Program. Since then, Japan has given billions of dollars in aid and assistance to India. India is one of the biggest recipients of Japanese ODA. These are largely concessional loans given at a very cheap rate, at a very low interest rate with long repayment periods. And these Japanese funds, they have been critical for several large projects in India. All the mega projects that we have, for example, the metro rail projects, the Delhi Metro, Bengaluru Metro, they all have funding from Japan. At least part of it has been funded through Japanese loans. Then the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, the dedicated freight corridors, the Western and Eastern dedicated freight corridor, the high-speed railway line, the bullet train project from Mumbai to Ahmedabad. All these critical projects of India, these large infrastructure projects, are funded with Japanese support. Japan is also investing heavily in the northeast of India as part of our Act East policy. Under Look East Act East policy, we have given priority for Southeast Asia and East Asia. So Japan has been roped in to provide for the development of Northeast India. It has been investing in Assam, in Tripura, Arunachal Pradesh, in several infrastructure projects. Next, we have signed a free trade agreement with Japan in 2011 called Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. That is the close economic relations we have. A lot of Japanese companies have a presence in India, including Toyota, Sony, Mitsubishi, right? The list goes on. India is a major hub and we have very close ties between our private firms as well. We also set up a 2+2 dialogue recently. It's a unique diplomatic dialogue between the defense ministers and foreign ministers of both the countries. We have similar dialogues with US and Australia as well. Basically, all the Quad members, they have a 2+2 dialogue between themselves. where the respective defense foreign ministers meet simultaneously to discuss all security and foreign policy issues. Japan has been invited as a permanent member into the Malabar naval exercise since 2015. Until then, it was a bilateral naval exercise between India and US. It was started in 1990s, 1992. Since then, India-US had this bilateral naval exercise going on. In 2006, for the first time, we tried inviting other countries like Japan, Australia, and Singapore. But China retaliated against this move. China felt that it was a military grouping of these countries to contain and block China. So India pulled out of the initiative later, and we returned Malabar back to the bilateral format. We kept it as a naval exercise only with the US. We stopped inviting Japan, Singapore, and Australia. But as China got more aggressive against India, as it deliberately carried out border incursions and escalated the tensions, India went ahead and invited Japan as a permanent member in 2015, and Malabar exercise became a trilateral exercise. And after the recent Ladakh clashes in 2020, we have invited Australia as well as a permanent member. So now, all the 4 countries who are members of Quad, they participate in the Malabar exercise as permanent members: India, Australia, Japan, and the US. Then India, Japan, and Australia have even set up a supply chain resilience initiative. This is to reduce their dependency on China, reduce the dependency on Chinese-dominated supply chains. This is a new initiative they started after the pandemic. Then India, Japan have a joint infrastructure project called Asia-Africa Growth Corridor that is seen as a counter to China's Belt and Road Initiative. If China is creating infrastructure around the world through Belt and Road Initiative, Japan and India have Asia-Africa Growth Corridor. They are looking to take up projects, joint infrastructure projects in Sri Lanka, in Africa, in Bangladesh and Myanmar, etc. So this is the close relationship that is present between the 2 countries. We are also looking to procure few defense platforms from Japan. All right. So based on this, we can say that statement 1 and 2 both are correct statements. 2+2 dialogue exists between the 2. In 2015, Japan was invited as a permanent member to the Malabar exercise. But third statement is wrong. 2 countries are not negotiating an FTA. They already have an FTA. The CEPA was signed in 2011, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. So statement 3 is wrong. So 2 statements are correct. Option B is the correct answer. Next, question number 16. With which of the following countries has India signed FTAs last year? A very interesting question. This again tests your current affairs knowledge. It's not very specific to one topic. It is testing your broad knowledge about India's FTAs with other countries. Last year, we have signed few important FTAs. So let's see how many of you know with which countries have we signed these FTAs. United Kingdom, Australia, UAE, and Canada. Take a couple of seconds and let's see how many of you can get the answer right. Three more seconds. Okay, let's end the poll. Let's see how many of you have got it right. %73% have said option B is correct. 2 and 3 only. Very good. That indeed is the right answer. Last year, India has signed landmark free trade agreements with Australia and the UAE. First was with UAE in April and in the earlier part of 2022. India and UAE, one of India's largest trading partners, as we saw earlier, it's usually the 3rd largest trading partner. We signed the CEPA, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, that provides duty-free access to most of the imports and exports between the 2 countries. Most of the commodities, especially in the field of textiles, gems and jewelry, gold, right? Then furniture and many other sectors, including textiles, pharmaceuticals, they've all been identified under this free trade agreement, and they will be given duty-free access from both the sides. This is expected to boost the trade relationship exponentially. Similarly, we signed another free trade agreement with Australia called ECTA, Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement with Australia, which also provides duty-free access to both the countries for several commodities. It will boost agriculture sector, industries, both in India and Australia. It will take up the trade volume to new levels, and it's going to create lakhs of jobs in both the countries. So Australia looks forward to several Indian goods, Indian textiles, Indian gems and jewelry, for example. All these are labor-intensive industries. If the export volume increases to Australia, more jobs will be created in India. There are several Australian products which are very high quality products that have a lot of demand in India. For example, Australian dairy products, some of the dairy products, Australian beverages, wine and beer, for example, right? Then technology products, engineering products, they all have a lot of demand in India. So they will be given duty-free access where the duties will be slashed to almost zero, thereby boosting the trade between the two sides. With UK and Canada, we are negotiating an FTA. It is still in process. All right, please remember this. We are negotiating FTAs with UK, Canada, European Union, and few other major powers. They're all still in process. It's not been finalized. So 2 and 3 is absolutely correct. Option B becomes the correct answer. Question number 17. Consider the following statements. Colombo Security Conclave traces its roots to 2011 as a trilateral maritime security grouping of India, Sri Lanka, and the Maldives. Mauritius, Seychelles, Myanmar, and Bangladesh joined as members last year. It is seen as an extension of the Quad grouping. Which of the statements are correct? Go ahead, try and give the answer. Meanwhile, I'll provide you the explanation. See, in 2011, India established a trilateral maritime security initiative focused on the Indian Ocean region with 3 major countries, of course India, then Maldives and Sri Lanka. This was part of India's strategy to retain its traditional dominating influence in the Indian Ocean, to deal with all the security threats, to protect the EEZs, to tackle terrorism, piracy, organized crime, to deal with disasters, etc. So we created a security platform. We started supplying weapons and defense platforms as well to these countries. We started working closely with them. We deployed our Navy, Air Force, gifted them naval vessels, aircrafts and helicopters to carry out reconnaissance and surveillance. Alright, so such a close security arrangement was created by India called the Trilateral Maritime Security Arrangement. This has been named as Colombo Security Conclave, and last year in 2022, a major summit was held. During this summit, that is led by the National Security Advisors, Mauritius was added as the 4th member. So today this group is made up of these 4 Indian Ocean countries focusing on regional maritime security. Bangladesh and Seychelles were added as observers during last year's Colombo summit. Even Myanmar has shown interest to participate with the group, but it has taken no further steps. But Bangladesh and Seychelles are just observers, whereas these 4 are members. Got it? So it is essentially a maritime security grouping led by the respective national security councils, led by national security advisors, and it brings together the armed forces, the Coast Guard, the intelligence agencies and other law enforcement security agencies of all these countries to focus on Indian Ocean region. Indian Ocean is very vulnerable. There is large-scale drug trafficking, arms trafficking. There are several terrorist insurgent groups. There is piracy present. It's prone to disasters. So it's very essential to build up this security partnership. That is why India has led this initiative called Colombo Security Conclave. So statement 1 is absolutely correct. It has its roots in 2011 as a trilateral grouping between India, Sri Lanka and Maldives. Second statement is wrong. Mauritius is the only country which was added as the fourth member. Seychelles and Bangladesh, as I told you, they have been admitted as observers. They have shown interest to become a member, but it is still in the future. Myanmar also has shown interest, but it's not part of the grouping as of now. So statement 2 is wrong. Statement 3 also is incorrect. The Quad group has nothing to do with Colombo Security Conclave. It's not an extension of the Quad. It's not directly connected or linked. It's easy to get confused, but trust me, they're not connected. So 2 and 3 can be eliminated. Option A, 1 only, becomes the correct answer. I really hope most of you were able to get the right answer. It's almost 40% have said option B. So sorry, that's the wrong answer. Majority of them have got it wrong. Only 28% have got the right answer. See, this is where you need clarity. I know the topic seems familiar. The moment you look at the names of the countries, you would have jumped to assume 1 and 2 both are correct. But read the statement carefully. Along with Mauritius, these names are also mentioned that they have joined as members last year. It's wrong. Seychelles and Bangladesh, they're only observers right now. Myanmar is not part of it. So clearly the statement is incorrect. So A is the right answer, 1 only. 18th question. The Trans-Himalayan Multi-Dimensional Connectivity Network is a partnership involving which of these countries? This topic also acquired a lot of prominence in newspapers in the last 1 year. This is an initiative. It's a transport connectivity initiative between China and our neighbor, Nepal. Is that clear? The Trans-Himalayan Connectivity Initiative is between China and Nepal, and it is part of the Belt and Road Initiative of China. China has made rapid advances in building advanced infrastructure in Tibet, and it has been extending this infrastructure across the Himalayas into Nepal. It is connecting the railway lines and road networks and pipelines, thereby stepping up its economic, strategic and military influence into Nepal. This is of great concern for India. For example, there is a railway line that China has extended from Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, right across the Himalayas, almost up until Lumbini, the birthplace of Lord Gautam Buddha. Lumbini is not just of cultural significance where China is playing a role countering India's influence, but Lumbini is right next to the Indian border. So right along the borders of UP and Bihar, Chinese projects are being extended in the Terai belt of Nepal, in the plains of Nepal. China's road railway projects from Tibet are coming across the Himalayas into key junctions and places in Nepal, which is closer to India. Places like Pokhara, Bharatpur, Baireni, all these key places which are quite close to India, even Lumbini. All these places are being connected through these road and rail projects, and this is a strategic threat for India. China already has a lot of military capabilities in Tibet, right? It has advanced infrastructure, large number of troops and heavy weaponry. Our fear is that in a worst case scenario, China might be able to mobilize the equipment and the troops right next to India's border, possibly through these routes. We also see this as an economic threat because Belt and Road Initiative in itself represents an economic and strategic challenge for India. There are reports that China wants to extend this network, the Trans-Himalayan Multi-Dimensional Connectivity Network, to link this with CPEC corridor between China and Pakistan. I'm sure you would have read in newspapers just 2 days ago that CPEC is being extended into Afghanistan. This is another big development, big breaking development. See, India had already boycotted the CPEC corridor and the Belt and Road Initiative. Why? It was because of the alignment of the CPEC corridor. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is connecting the Xinjiang province of China with the Gwadar port in Balochistan. It is passing through POK, Pakistan Occupied Kashmir, which is Indian territory that has been illegally captured by Pakistan. These Chinese projects are passing through Shaksgam Valley and Gilgit-Baltistan, which are Indian territories that are under the illegal occupation of Pakistan. So the project is a direct threat to India's sovereignty and integrity. It undermines our integrity and sovereignty. That is why India has rejected the CPEC project and we have boycotted the Belt and Road Initiative. But now China, Pakistan are expanding this to Afghanistan as well, and there are reports, very credible reports, that the Trans-Himalayan network might be linked with these projects to create a mega project in South Asia. China might further expand the BRI, linking CPEC project with the Trans-Himalayan network in Nepal and the extension proposed into Afghanistan. So this is being referred to as the Himalayan Quad. Strategic experts have called it the Himalayan Quad, a partnership between China, Nepal, Pakistan and Afghanistan. This not only presents an economic challenge, but also a major strategic and security challenge as well, given the alignment of the routes, the proximity to Indian borders, and how it violates our integrity and sovereignty. So that is why the topic is very important. The right answer is option B. China and Nepal have started the Trans-Himalayan multi-dimensional connectivity network. Question number 19. Which of the following projects connect Northeast India with Southeast Asia? The IMT Trilateral Highway, INSTC Corridor, Kaladan project. All three topics are frequently in news. I'm fairly certain you would have heard about it. I'm sure most of you can get the answer right as well. But since the topic is frequently in news, it's important to revise this. The IMT highway, the Trilateral Highway, it's a key component of our Act East policy. It was proposed under the Look East policy of India and it's being taken forward under the Act East policy. It connects India, Myanmar and Thailand. It links Moreh, which is a border town, a commercial trading town in Manipur, along the India-Myanmar border, connects this with major commercial centers of Myanmar like Mandalay and Yangon, and links it with Mesot in Thailand. So it's a very ambitious connectivity project. There are plans, there are proposals from India to extend this highway all the way till Vietnam, covering Laos and Cambodia as well. It's a proposal. We have also proposed a railway line parallel to this highway connecting Delhi with Hanoi. Parallel to this road, we have proposed a railway line connecting India, Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia and Vietnam. These are proposed projects. Next, the Kaladan project, which is making a lot of news today. I hope you have read the newspaper today and yesterday as well. The strategic Sitwe port in Myanmar, which has been built by India as part of Kaladan project, has been inaugurated recently. Just a few hours ago, the Sitwe port has been inaugurated. It's a multimodal project because it involves multiple modes of transportation. It connects the Kolkata Haldia port on the east coast of India with the strategic Sitwe port in the Rakhine state of Myanmar through a maritime link. From here, goods can be taken through Kaladan River, where inland navigation has been created on the Kaladan River up till Paletwa, and then a road has been built to transport the goods into Mizoram. So this basically creates an alternate route for connecting Northeast India with rest of India. That can be done via Myanmar. It can improve our trade relations with Myanmar as well. So that is why this project is critical, and it was delayed for many years, pending for many years, and just few hours back, the Sitwe port has been inaugurated between India and Myanmar. Next, you have the INSTC project. It was signed in 2002. The proposal goes back to 1990s. It involves India, Iran, Azerbaijan and Russia to create a shorter link between Indian Ocean, Caspian Sea and Russia and Europe. Because the traditional route for taking goods from India to Russia is a very long route. You can see here in the map. Currently, goods are sent via Arabian Sea, then Red Sea and Suez Canal, the Mediterranean and Atlantic, and all across Europe, then reaches Russia. So this traditional shipping route is very long, time consuming. That's one reason why trade has not flourished between India and this region. So the plan here is to create a shorter route linking India with Iran through the ports such as Bandar Abbas and Chabahar port, and further connect this with Caspian Sea, where goods can be taken through inland navigation through the Caspian Sea, that is via Azerbaijan, to reach Russia, Eastern Europe and Europe as well. It's a very ambitious proposal. Many other countries have shown interest as well. The other countries in the region, even Turkey, Armenia, and few other countries in the region have also expressed interest to be a part of this. But the project has not really taken off because of the Western sanctions against Iran and Russia, how India-Iran relations have been affected. Due to all these developments, the project hasn't really taken off, but still, it does have a lot of geopolitical significance. So this is the North-South Transport Corridor, the international North-South Transport Corridor. So based on this, you can easily say that 1 and 3, these are the two projects which connect Northeast India with Southeast Asia. Because Myanmar is the link. Myanmar is like a bridge connecting Northeast India with Southeast Asia. So 1 and 3, option C becomes the correct answer for this question. Around 63% have got it right. Very good. Majority of them have got the right answer. Now we come to the last question for today, the last question for international relations. Consider the following. India and Mauritius have signed Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Partnership Agreement in 2021. It is the first trade agreement signed by India with an African country. It provides for full duty-free access to all the products. This question is very important because even though the agreement was signed in 2021, it was recently in news. Just few months back, India and Mauritius, they held their first meeting under this agreement to facilitate the freer and faster movement of certain goods. So that is why this free trade agreement is important. And also, this is the first FTA, the first trade agreement rather, that we have signed with an African country. So this agreement, the Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Partnership Agreement, it was signed in 2021. We have brought this into force, and this happens to be the first trade agreement of India with an African country. So first two statements are absolutely correct. However, it is not a full FTA. It's not a full-fledged free trade agreement. It is a limited trade agreement that covers few selected goods and commodities. It covers few sectors like trade in goods, trade in services. It reduces few barriers to trade. It addresses issues like sanitary, phytosanitary measures, dispute settlement, etc. It is a limited trade agreement. It's not a full-fledged FTA, so there is no full duty-free access for all products. That is what makes the third statement incorrect. It does not provide for full duty-free access to all the products because it is a limited trade agreement covering few sectors and few commodities. Is that clear? So statement 1 is correct, even 2 is correct, 1 and 2. Option B becomes the correct answer. I hope most of you could understood whatever we have covered today. In total, in these 3 sessions, I have covered close to 70 topics through 60 questions. So we really hope the sessions were helpful. Do let us know how the session went. Please comment more so we know that you're liking these sessions. Share it with other aspirants so they can take the full benefit for the upcoming prelims, and also without fail like the video and subscribe to the channel. So that is it from my side for today, but we have few more sessions to go. I'll see you again tomorrow, because tomorrow and day after we have sessions on government schemes, and after that we have a session on places in news from art and culture, and the last session would be on 15th May for places in news from international relations. So that is it for today. We have few more sessions to go. Please attend all the classes. We'll see you again. Till then, take care. Have a good night.